Self-confidence. We might think we understand it, we might even think that we have it, but what do we really mean when we say self-confidence, and how can psychology help us in improving our self-confidence? In this video from GetPsyched, guys, I'm going to be showing you how psychology can help us to boost our self-confidence and how you can take away 5 key steps from psychology in improving your self-confidence. Welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, guys, and like I said, this week we're going to be taking a look at psychology's top 5 steps on improving your self-confidence and how to actually boost that self-confidence. You're also going to want to make sure to stay tuned right to the very end, because we're going to be looking at a bit of a strange step that's really important when it comes to boosting our self-confidence, but can be really powerful, so make sure to stay tuned for that. What do we actually mean when we say self-confidence? It's a really common term, but it's one that, strangely enough, still lacks a lot of clarity. And Benabou in 2002 stated that self-confidence was simply the process of believing in yourself. But is that actually the case? Lenny in 1977, for example, stated that self-confidence was all about your preconceived perceptions of your abilities of a task before you undertake the task. And the Psychology Online Dictionary states that self-confidence is all about your belief in your abilities to undertake day-to-day tasks or day-to-day activities. So we have some kind of fluctuations in the understanding of self-confidence. In truth, I think it's an encapsulation of all of those things. I think we've got to think a little bit about what Benabou says in 2002 about simply just believing ourselves, what Lenny in 1977 says about our preconceived perceptions of our abilities to undertake tasks, and also what the Online Psychology Dictionary says about our belief in our ability to undertake day-to-day tasks. Self-confidence is really a combination of all 3 of those things. I also think there's some clarity to be brought here about the difference between confidence and self-confidence. And in my opinion, and many may disagree with me, confidence is more to do with the process of the belief or our perceptions of external things. For example, we can have confidence about whether or not our train is going to run on time, but self-confidence is more of that internal confidence. Do we believe in our own abilities to undertake a task well enough, regardless of the external circumstances? One of the interesting things about self-confidence also is it becomes a bit of a perpetual cycle. Psychological research shows that people with higher self-confidence are actually happier. Their belief in their abilities to undertake tasks effectively enough leads to more positive outcomes, which leads to a kind of happier sense of well-being, which leads to more self-confidence. So it becomes this perpetual cycle. So now that we have a little bit of a better understanding of what self-confidence is all about, some of the psychological research around self-confidence, and also the difference between confidence and self-confidence, what are some of those key steps from psychology about boosting our self-confidence? What can psychology tell us about improving our self-confidence? Well, the first key step from psychology of boosting our self-confidence is facing a fear. And what I mean by facing a fear is that's kind of taken actually a little bit from exposure therapy that we might use in a therapeutic setting, or that psychologists might use. When we have a fear of something, often what happens is we run away from it, we hide from it. I've got a real fear of spiders, and in my house my wife is the spider catcher because I just can't stand them. What I'm doing though is I'm consistently staying away from spiders, and all that's doing is elevating my fear of those spiders. In order to gain more self-confidence about my abilities to deal with a spider, I need to confront it. Facing that fear is then that progressive exposure of something that really scares you. And part of the reason why this is so important in improving your self-confidence is that psychological research shows that if we're able to utilize the principles of exposure therapy to one thing that scares us, we're more likely to use those principles to face other fears. And one of the other things that psychological research shows us is that fear is so often correlated to self-confidence. For example, the fear of public speaking. That's something that really terrifies some people, and often it terrifies people because they don't have the level of self-confidence that they need in order to believe that they can actually speak well in public. So we can start to see a lot about how facing fears or facing a fear is very highly correlated to self-confidence. And by overcoming one fear, that's going to lead to more self-confidence. That's going to lead to an ability in ourselves to believe that we can actually overcome the things that scare us. For example, that person who has that fear of public speaking, if they eventually get themselves to a point where they can speak in front of 20 people, that's going to be a really positive thing. They're going to be able to take those principles and apply it to the next thing of speaking in front of 50 people. And we start to progressively expose ourselves more and more to that fear-stimulating situation that can, if we do it effectively, can lead to more self-confidence. So my advice on this, based on psychology, based on those psychological principles of boosting our self-confidence, is to find something that actually really scares you and think about something maybe quite small at first and start to progressively expose yourself to that situation or to that fear or that thing that scares you. And in doing so, you're going to build that self-confidence in your own abilities. You can take those lessons into future fears as well. Okay, step number 2 from psychology on improving our self-confidence is to reconstruct our perceptions of failure. Now, the reason I put this in is because a psychologist that I have followed for a number of years now, Carol Dweck, she wrote a book called Mindset that's all about overcoming our certain mindsets of failure. You know, she says that the way that we correspond or the way that we relate to failure really does determine our confidence, really does determine our happiness and our success. If you view failure as a reason to stop or a reason to no longer believe in your abilities or yourself, you're not going to get very far. If we're able to reconstruct our perceptions of failure though, we can learn to use our failure to actually help boost our self-confidence. This is actually one of the lessons I learned a lot on my psychology doctorate. Now that I finished my doctorate, a lot of times people think that you must pass every assignment and you've done really well to get to the end. I failed a lot of my assignments. I failed a lot of my essays. And at first, when I first started my doctorate, that was a real blow to my confidence. That was really hard to take. I saw that failure as reason to say, do you know what, I shouldn't be on this doctorate. I don't know why I'm doing this. And instead, what I did in the future years was, I still failed assignments, but I reframed that failure as an opportunity for feedback, as an opportunity for learning. Okay, here are the things based on that failure that I didn't do well enough. I can work on those to apply those to future assignments and actually do much better. And I did do much better in those assignments. That process of reframing failure really helped in building my self-confidence. So I know this both on a practical level, but also on a psychological theory level, that reconstructing our perceptions of failure does a lot in improving our self-confidence. Okay, step number 3 from psychology about boosting our self-confidence is visualizing what it would be like to be self-confident. Now, this sounds really basic, sounds really straightforward. It's actually really difficult. One of the things that I do with clients who perhaps experience really high social anxiety, and what happens in high social anxiety sometimes is people lack all forms of self-confidence. They don't believe in themselves at all when they're entering a party or when they're meeting new people. They don't have any self-confidence really. And as a result, that social anxiety goes through the roof. This is an exercise that I get them to undertake almost on a daily basis where they can, is progressively visualizing themselves entering a situation that scares them and feeling self-confident. It's a really good way of boosting self-confidence actually. So for example, if you've got really high social anxiety, what we might do is say, right, okay, let's go through step by step, visualizing the process of entering a party and speaking to people that you've never spoken to before, and really in-depth visualization. So thinking about like what kind of clothes you're wearing, where you are, what kind of people are there, the conversations that you might have, the way that you might feel, the initial feelings, the feelings of success after you've confronted your social anxiety and felt better. This reminds me a lot actually of professional athletes. Professional athletes use this tool on a very regular basis as well. When they've got a big game coming up or there's a big competition that they've got to take part in, what they might do is they might visualize the process of them playing well or winning the championship. And in visualizing that, they build that self-confidence. They kind of create a blueprint for themselves of achievement. And as a result, their self-confidence really does improve. So this is a key step from psychology that can be really powerful in improving our self-confidence. Simply visualizing the process and visualizing a positive outcome will do wonders in being able to improve our self-confidence if we do it consistently. Okay, step number 4 in boosting our self-confidence and utilizing some psychological principles and improving our self-confidence is speaking to yourself the way you would speak to somebody that you cared about. Now this sounds like a little bit of a strange one, but fundamentally what I mean is being able to show levels of self-compassion and self-kindness. I see this practically in my therapy work all the time. One of the fast-track ways to reduce your self-confidence is to be incredibly critical of yourself. Now, we as people, probably in large in society, are very, very good at showing very high levels of self-criticism. And in that level of self-criticism, we start to degrade ourselves, we push our abilities down, we push our beliefs in ourselves down. That self-confidence gets really damaged based off of that self-critical nature. So if you can think, and again, this is an exercise that I do in therapy sometimes with clients, is speaking to themselves from another perspective. So speaking to themselves like they were a third party. what would be some of the things that you would say to somebody that you cared about that was going through what you were going through? What kind of encouraging or kind things would you say, and how can you apply those things to yourself? How can you start to say those things to yourself when it comes to situations that scare you or situations that you feel anxious in? In doing so, you're going to help build that self-confidence from the ground up. Okay, step number 5 when looking at psychological steps to help boost our self-confidence, and this is one of the steps that I mentioned at the start that sounds a little bit strange but actually has a lot of psychological backing to it, is improving our posture. Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy has actually researched this area extensively and has found a couple of really interesting things. One of the first things that she found was increasing our posture when it comes to improving our self-confidence sounds like a good idea. It just sounds like a kind of thing that you should do. You know, it's like a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And that's what a lot of people think. A lot of people think that if I put my shoulders back and I sit up straight, stand up straight, keep my chest out, and I feel my feet kind of firmly planted on the ground, all of those kind of things that are part of good posture, that's a kind of fake it till you make it, and that's just going to make me feel, that's going to just make the situation easier. I'm going to look like I'm confident, and therefore people are going to treat me like I'm confident. Now there's an element to that, and she found that in her research. What she really found in her research though was that the way we actually hold ourselves when we're sitting and when we're standing has a neurochemical impact on the way that we feel. That posture, that good positive posture, actually sends messages to our brain that allows us to feel better and allows us to actually feel more self-confident. Now she did this in many ways by comparing people with good posture and bad posture. People who kind of slunch and kind of hunch their back over and their shoulders kind of fall forward. Those people that have kind of poor posture, they don't have the same neurochemical pattern as people who over a period of time consistently hold themselves with good posture. Those people had a neurochemical pattern that encouraged them, that actually made them feel better. So posture isn't just something that you should do for your self-confidence because it's like, just in case, or it's like a fake it till you make it thing. It actually has chemical implications for your improvement of self-confidence. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. Guys, this week we've been taking a look at the top 5 steps from psychology on improving your self-confidence and how those steps can really help boost that self-confidence. If you've enjoyed today's video, guys, then make sure to hit the like button and you can comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you've been enjoying GetPsyched as a whole, make sure to subscribe to us and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and get weekly reminders every time we upload. Thanks again for watching, guys, and hopefully catch you next week.